Good day, folks. My name is Christo Teron. I am the founder of TradeTaxPlus Center of Excellence. We are better known for our technical expertise in the field of tax, more specifically VAT, but we have identified a need for more information and guidance with regards to how do you manage a tax function in organizations. So this program is aimed at providing a framework and very specific tools on how to manage a tax function. It starts off with certain basic management and operational principles, but we then move into strategic imperatives. Where do you position this function within organizations? We also deal with tax managers. What should their KPIs look like? What should the profile of the person look like that is appointed as a tax manager within a corporate? We also look at standard policies and procedures in organizations and examples of that will assist to implement a proper tax structure within organizations. And towards the end, we deal with basic tools of how do you reconcile certain transactions where they differ from what's in the VAT return versus what's in the accounting records. So we hope that you'll enjoy this journey with us. We certainly think it's high time that the debate is opened in terms of the need for more than just technical knowledge for tax resources in organizations, and I hope this will assist to get that debate going. So if we look at the general strategic management principles, now the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Now it's not me that is that clever. This is Mr. Covey in his book First Things First. And he said the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And it's so easy in an environment where so many things happen all at the same time that we can lose our focus. And then all of a sudden the main thing is no longer the main thing. It might be that you've got somebody in your organization that should be an academic and should not be responsible for detailed work. Or maybe that person should be responsible more for a strategic view on things. But it is always important within your role that the main thing remains the main thing. And then understand the organization's default position. Now, what does that mean? Now, that means if you're only making zero-rated supplies, that's a high-risk organization. If you're only making standard-rated supplies, well, it's not a high-risk organization because your default position is that everything that gets sold is subject to VAT at the standard rate. So all you need to do is reconcile your VAT returns to your income statements. So understand your position. If you are an organization that makes mixed supplies, that's a high risk area. Understand that position. If you're an organization that does not make mixed supplies, just your local retailer, then it's not an issue in your life. So understand your default position. Spend your time where it should be spent. You're getting paid for that. Then the sound of music principle. Let's start at the very beginning. Understand the position and then start working from that position forward. So don't just jump in the middle and try to sort X, Y, and Z out before you understand the processes within the organization. We often find this in practice that tax managers are so occupied with putting out fires that they never get to the real stuff of starting at the beginning and cleaning out the slate. So apply that principle. Let's start at the very beginning. And then do not overanalyze. Sometimes it simply is what it is. And you've got to get to a point where you accept this is now what it is and move forward. Otherwise, you get into analysis paralysis. I know that's a cliche, but we get into that. And the more documents we generate, the better work we have done. That's absolute nonsense. Get to a point where you understand what the default position is. Get to a point where you start at the very beginning and then do what needs to be done. Do not overanalyze. And then apply a sound business principles. Do not use expensive people for mundane activities. And it must make sense within the context of adding value to that business, because ultimately it is about adding value to the shareholders. So don't overanalyze, and what you're doing against, does this add value to the organization? If we then look at a general operational management principles, it starts with empowered human capital and trained resources. That is a huge challenge at the moment, especially in the field of VAT. We see a bigger and bigger void between experienced people and new people coming in, with very little of that information and knowledge and experience being transferred. Now, just a little bit of a advertisement. This is exactly what TradeTaxPlus does. It provides you with all the information that normally just disappears when a person leaves the organization. Strong VAT processes. Don't build a house on the sand. It will not weather the storm. That has always been like that. And that is often what happens if you're just killing fires. You're setting out fires. Sometimes the storm is going to come and take it all away. Then clear corporate governance. Understand what your role is in terms of corporate governance. Understand what your position is, and have strong systems around that. And when we get to things like policies and procedures, I know those are boring things, but when we get to that, you'll see how important it is to build that house on the rocks. And then strong communication channels. How often do we get this in practice, where the tax manager says, I'm the last person to hear about this. Then the whole transaction has been concluded and agreements have been signed and so forth and so on. It's just a sad situation, isn't it? But those communication lines must be open, and they must be used, and they must be monitored. So the line is there, and it's a policy that you must follow a certain line. Then you have to ask the question, why was the policy not followed? Sounds very rigid, but unfortunately that is the way it should be done in large organizations. Margaret Wheatley, in Leadership and the New Science, Discovering Order in a Chaotic World, wrote the following: many former planning advocates now speak about strategic thinking rather than planning. They emphasize that organizations require new skills instead of the ability to analyze and predict. We need to know how to stay acutely aware of what's happening now, and we need to be better, faster learners from what just happened. Agility and intelligence are required to respond to that incessant barrage of frequent, unplanned changes. And what does that tell you? She's written this book quite a few years back, but it is as relevant today and more relevant than it has been in the past, because of masses and masses of data that need to be dealt with. And now we're looking at artificial intelligence more and more. How can artificial intelligence sift through some of these issues before it ends up on a person's desk? And we'll deal with that in the remainder of this course. If we then look at strategic alignment, it is aligning the organizational strategy with the tax strategy. Now, often this is not done in organizations. Tax is seen as a function that sits somewhere on the side. They must make certain that we don't pay more tax than we need to, and they probably also measured in terms of how much tax they can save, which is a disaster in the making, because it takes the focus off the real thing. Consistently go back to those principles. The main thing must remain the main thing. And then understanding the strategic imperatives, and we will be talking through the strategic imperatives in detail, each one separately, but they're also in your material, which you can read about. And then the strategic, and of course operations. Tax is an operational issue, whether we like it or not. What is the link between strategy at the corporate level versus strategy at operational level? And those two should be aligned. Then understanding the difference between first and second level compliance. So I'm just going to talk about that a little bit, but it is set out in your material in detail. So if you look at the strategic imperatives, that would be a formal tax strategy, a formal tax policy, and formal procedures. That sets the scene. What are the operational imperatives? Clear lines of accountability, clear lines of responsibility, empowerment, oversee functions, and communication. So if you have that in your organization and the two imperatives are aligned, you're probably going to get a good outcome. But what are we talking about? We talk about the two levels. The first level of compliance is alignment, documentation, and audit trail. So that is where you set the structure. The second level is monitoring. So the structure provides all the information, provides the inputs, provides feedback, which is critical in organizations. And we'll keep on talking about organizational feedback. We'll provide the feedback, hopefully relevant feedback, and then you've got the monitoring. Somebody has to do something with that feedback. And often that's where things go wrong, because nobody follows up on feedback. Wonderful system, just nobody has the time to act according to what should potentially be done. In the next session, we'll start unpacking some of these issues. Hope you will continue going through this with us.